Hello, Southwest students. This is the month of March, and March is an important month because March is Women's History Month. Why do we have to have a Women's History Month anyway? What's the purpose for it? I'm just going to give you a little bit of background today, okay? So, the first ever Women's Rights Convention was held in 1848. 1848. And at the convention, they talked about women being allowed to participate in our government by voting. Okay? And the convention did not lead to women being able to vote, but it did lead to a continued movement for women's voting rights. Okay? Women officially got the right to vote on August 18th, 1920. And on that day, they passed the 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. So, from 1848 to 1920, women did not have the right to vote at that time. Nor did we have the right to vote prior to that time. Okay? So voting rights was a struggle. Another struggle for women was the ability to work and get equal pay. Okay? So, in the early 1900s, only 20% of women worked outside of the home. Okay? The main job of women at this time was to be mothers and to be child caregivers and to be housewives. So they worked in the home. They cleaned the house, they fed the kids, they took care of the kids, they made meals. That's what they did. Not that many of them were in the workforce, only 20% of the whole country. Okay? But then came the Great Depression. So in 1929, the stock market crashed, the banks were running out of money, and men were getting laid off of their jobs. Okay? Men were getting laid off of their jobs because men worked in fields such as manufacturing and coal mining. So with the bank losing money, they couldn't give loans to the companies, and so the companies could not pay the males to work. However, there was some jobs for women like teaching, sewing, that kind of thing that allowed women to gain more employment. So between 1930 and 1940, women's employment grew by 24%. Okay? Now, then came World War II. So when World War II came, a large number of males were called to fight in the military. And so there were not men here to do the jobs that needed to be done. Things still needed to be produced and made. Okay? So what happened as a result is women took a lot of the jobs that the men had while they were at war. So between 1940 and 1945, the workforce increased another 37%. But even though women were doing the men's job, the companies paid them less than the males earned. Okay? So they had a job, but they were paid way less money than the men were paid who were doing the same job as them. Okay? So it was an inequality in payment. So John F. Kennedy, who was a president, in June 10th, 1963, he signed into law the Equal Pay Act. And what this said was, if a woman works the same job as a man, she gets the same amount of pay. Okay? So they got the same amount of pay. Then, there were still some jobs that discriminated against women altogether. Okay? So, On July 2nd of 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson signs in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And what that did was ended employment discrimination. In other words, an employer could not say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to hire you because you're a woman," even if that female was qualified to do the position. Sometimes employers would not hire them because they were female. Okay, so this Civil Rights Act outlawed that. Then, now this is not that long ago. January 24th of 2013. 2013. This is 2021. So this is not that long ago, guys. This is 8 years ago. The U.S. military removes the ban on women serving in combat positions. So before this, women were not allowed to serve in combat positions. So they were not allowed to go out and really fight for their country. Even though that's what they chose to do, they were not allowed to do it because they were women. And women are weaker. That was the thought. Women are weaker. Women can't do this. Oh no, a woman can't die for her country. A woman can't fight for her country. Oh no, a woman can't fight for her country. We don't want them in combat positions, so they didn't let them be in combat positions. So in 2013, only 8 years ago, women could start having combat positions and fighting for their country. Okay? So as you can see, just from this little bit of brief history I gave you, from 1848 to 2021, women have had to fight. And Kamala Harris becoming the vice president, that's another major thing for females, because we have not had a vice president. We have not ever had a vice president that's a woman, and we have not had a vice president that is an African American woman. So that's a big milestone for females, and another step in the direction of us having a major role in politics, which has been a long time in the making. So, just from that little bit of history I gave you, women have been fighting for 173 years to be equal to men and to have the same positions and even the same regard as men have. Okay? So that's a very long time. And you may not know about a lot of female figures and what they have done for our country. So we are going to look at two different females today and what they have done, what makes them special, what makes them different, what makes them important to the United States history. All right? So you're going to watch two videos on those two people, and I hope that you learned something. I want you to think about who in your life that is a woman is important to you and why. Okay? So maybe that's your mom, maybe that's your grandma, maybe that's your sister, okay? Or your aunt or whoever. So I want you to think about what female in your life is important and what they do for you, okay? All right, well, I will see you again next week. We're going to continue looking at women in history through March, and I will see you on next Thursday. Have a good rest of the week.